Hi guys, I'm Sam. Welcome back to my channel. So, we have been looking at Drive to Survive Season 2. However, like we did at the end of, when we got to the end of Season 1, we are going to be taking a little bit of a break from Formula 1 and we're going to talk about animals again. So you may remember that in some previous videos I mentioned that I was going to talk you through how to breed an animal correctly, because it wasn't just as simple as putting a male and a female together and hoping for the best. So we're going to start by looking at how to breed a dog, because they're quite popular. They're the things that people breed an awful lot. I mean, people do breed cats. For some reason, people have, I don't know, they hold cats to a different standard to dogs. Don't ask me why, I don't know, because an animal's an animal and they should all be treated the same. We shouldn't be holding one to a different to a higher standard or not. So we've looked at the Breeding Act of Dogs of 1973 and the Animal Welfare Act. There's another one which is the Sale of Dogs, which is basically what we did cover in Lucy's Law. Do you remember when we said pet shops aren't allowed to sell dogs anymore? You've got to go straight to the breeder. Oh, that's what we're on about here. So the reason that I'm talking about through this is because there can be problems that occur when breeding an animal if you're not careful or you don't know what you're doing. So I'm just going to try and make people aware so that there's less problems. We are going to look at different problems in a different video, but yeah. So let's start by looking at briefly going over reasons to breed an animal. Why would you choose to breed an animal rather than maybe buying one or rescuing one? So there's many reasons why somebody would want to breed their dog. Most of the time it's money. And another, this is where things get a little bit wrong, because a lot of people follow the Kennel Club standard. So there's one for America and there's one for the UK, and they follow these standards if they want to breed for competition. I've probably said in the past that I don't agree with a lot of the things that their standards, because they do a lot of inbreeding and they breed dogs so that they can't breathe or they can't walk. There's been a lot of welfare issues and a lot of animal rights activists have had uphill battle with the Kennel Club in the past. I do believe that they're getting a little bit better on their breeding standards, but there's still room for a lot of improvement. So the reasons people might breed dogs is working dogs. So that's things like guide dogs and assistance dogs, and hunting dogs, specifically for gamekeepers. Some breed them for sports like huskies to pull sleds and malamutes, or simply because it's a business, or you just wanted a puppy yourself, and you just you've got dogs, and you fancy a new puppy but you don't want to go and buy one, so you decide to breed them anyway. Like I said, some people do just breed for the money, and that's where we get problems with puppy farms. And then some people stupidly and very awfully, they breed for the aesthetics, so these designer dogs, and again, that's not a really good reason to wanting to breed your dog. Neither. Let's not have designer dogs. It's just cruel, and then when they come out of fashion you just dump them, and it's absolutely horrendous that people do that. And they certainly shouldn't, because a dog's to life. Just because it's no longer fashionable to have that breed of dog doesn't mean that you should give up on that dog. That dog's still got a life, and it still has feelings, and it still needs to be cared for. You wouldn't do it to your child. You wouldn't have a child and, oh, it's not fashionable to have a little boy anymore, or a little girl, so I'm just gonna get rid of it because it's not fashionable to have children. It's just not how it works. So the very first thing you need to consider is that when you're looking at breeding your animals, is that you need to select the right breeding males and females. So what do I mean by that? So you need to, well, depending on why you're breeding them, you're going to breed on for one particular trait that you've maybe selected. Maybe you want a specific colour of dogs. It's gone into this designer thing. Or maybe you want dogs that are going to have the best sense of smell, the best eyesight, best hearing. Like I said, it all depends on what you're wanting in the next generation to get out of this puppy. What is the reason for you breeding this puppy? So that's why you need to know why you're wanting to breed your dog before you can think about breeding any animal. So let's say, for example, you only have female dogs, so you need to find a stud. This works both ways, by the way. We're just using the female as an example. So when you're picking a stud to breed with your female, you need to consider the health of both the dogs, okay? It is no good just making sure mum's healthy. Dad also has to be healthy, because if dad's got genetic issues, he could possibly pass them on to the puppies that you're trying to breed, and that's no good. You want dogs that haven't got any genetic elements and isn't going to affect your puppies whatsoever. So it's very important to look at any inherited disorders, like we've just said. And like I said, it's something that you want to avoid breeding into the next generation. So when you're looking for the stud, please, and I see this a lot from a lot of animal breeders, they will literally find a picture online and they're like, oh, that's good, and I'll just order the semen online. Yes, you can do that. Crazy. Not so much for dogs, but for like farm animals and horses. But anyway, go and have a look at the stud yourself, because photos, as we know, they can be photoshopped. And they don't always give you a clear picture or tell you the truth of what is going on. So it's so important that you're going to see the potential father of these puppies yourself. Like I've said, when you're actually buying a puppy, it's also very important to see if you can see dad as well as mum, if it's possible. So you need to, like I said, you need to make sure that they're healthy. And if they're not fit and healthy, that he may not be able to perform. Okay, males dogs, when it comes to breeding, are a lot more fussy than female dogs. Okay, so it's important to consider how old this stud is. Okay, you don't want a stud to be too young, because they're inexperienced. Well, it's not so much that they're inexperienced, it's just their hormone levels may not have gotten to the right levels, and they might not have matured enough to produce the sperm, basically. So the common belief is that males sexually mature at around 5 months of age, but you're not going to be breeding a puppy at 5 months of age. So most responsible owners will stud their dogs out before he's about 18 months old. I would wait until he was between 12 and 18 months old, rather than before. Anything younger than 12 months is a bit ridiculous. But yeah, the beginning, you kind of want to be looking at 12 months to 18 months, give or take. So here we go. So the problems with using a stud that is too young is simply inexperience, which means your female may not be impregnated, And on the other hand, using a male that is older can cause concern that he may have a lower sperm count. The most popular choice is not always wise, as when in the future you want to breed puppies, potentially from your original family's pet's daughter, that you may find it difficult to find a stud, as he may be her brother. So if a stud's really popular, then he's got a lot of children, and he's got a lot of offspring, which means it's really hard to keep that genetic variation up into the next generation. So if the father was popular, he may have assigned many puppies, and they may be related to the stud should get. So it's very important to have a stud from a total different gene pool. You would not sleep with your brother or your sister or your mother or your father or your aunt or your uncle or your cousins, etc. I hope. So don't think it's a good idea to do it with your dog. Basically, you wouldn't do it yourself. Don't force the dog to do it. So, also, let's say you have multiple female dogs and you just want to breed from one of them. So, which one's the best to breed from? So, what are the things that you need to consider when you're choosing a female to breed from? Is she typical of her breed? Is she the correct breed type? So this will depend on the breed you wish to breed in, as well as its many traits. And when we say she's typical for her breed, I mean, does she look like her breed? If she's a husky, does she look like a husky? If she's a King Charles Spaniel, does she look like a King Charles Spaniel? And she have those behaviours and stuff like that. Important things to look for are behaviour and aggression. So it's important that a female will be a good mum and it's not aggressive towards people and dogs. History, medical concerns, including any inheritable disorders. Ensure you have her reproductive systems and organs checked. It's kind of a little bit like sometimes humans, they have fertility issues, or maybe they're not getting pregnant. They might opt to go to the doctors and get everything checked out to make sure everything's working. So it's quite similar with dogs. And the reason you want it to be a good mum is it's a little bit less work for you. You don't have to hand rear the puppies. We are going to do a video on hand rearing puppies. But generally it's better for the pup if you don't hand rear them and mum does all the looking after. So if you're studying your dog out, you want to know the medical history of the female, because that's also important. So basically, if you're breeding a dog with somebody else's dog, just swap medical histories, not your own, the dog's medical histories. If you swap them, that'd be great. So you need to make sure she's fit and healthy. If she's in poor health, there may be a number of things that could cause problems for the health of the mother and the health of the development of the puppies. Some medical conditions you will need to look at are hip dysplasia. Hip dysplasia is not a lovely thing to live with. Trust me, I have it. I was born with it. It's got nothing to do with dodgy breeding though, I don't think. But I have it in both my hips and I have to live with that every single day. And even though my hip dysplasia is not all that bad and they don't fully dislocate, they do partly dislocate, and let me tell you, it is bloody painful. And it's just not nice. It's not something that I would want to force upon a dog, not after living it with myself. Anyway, elbow dysplasia is another one. This is testing my medical knowledge here, but OCD, which is osteoarthritis. I don't think I said that right, but just look up OCD. And if you look up CMO as well, then I won't have to try and pronounce these really big technical words that I can't pronounce. And then there's HOD, there's Wobbler syndrome, things like that. That's what you want to be looking at, and there's a heck of a lot more as well. So it's all about doing your research, by the way. As much as this video is going to help, still do some extra research into these things. So there's a number of techniques which you can use to breed your dog. Some suit different breeds better than others, okay? So these are... I hate this one. Don't be doing this one. But some people, like I said, they do inbreed, okay? Don't do it. It doesn't suit any dog, this inbreeding. And that's basically, you know, it's like brother system. They have pups, mother, father, whatever. And it does lead to infertility in dogs. It does not mean they have a pure bloodline. They have so many health issues. It is vile. It is disgusting. Just don't do it. If you're not incestuous yourself, don't make your dogs inbreed. It's just, like I said, it's disgusting, and a lot of the kennel club do that, and they do that with like things like pugs mainly. Do not get me wrong, I'm not saying that to all pugs it's the same. It's just some it is what I've heard, so you've got to be really, really careful. Line breeding, this is another one you should not do, okay? It's just as bad as inbreeding. And this, so basically line breeding is the breeding of dogs that are not as closely related, but they're still related. So we're looking at grandfather to granddaughter, uncle to niece, aunt to nephew, and cousins. Again, don't do it. Just don't do it. It's still just as vile. You're still breeding relatives. So crossbreeding or outbreeding is what you want to do. So that's basically where you breed two dogs together of the same species, so of the same breed, and they're not related. That's what you want to do, and that eliminates any genetic disorders or diseases. It tries to get rid of them. So let's have a look at genome phenotype requirements. So a genome is the genes within your dog. It's something that you don't see as such. So genome is what's going on the inside, the genetic information on the inside of your dog, and a phenotype is what the genes express. So that's eye colour, fur colour, floppy ears, pointy ears. They're all phenotypes. So let's have a look. So let's go into a little bit about Game of Thrones, the TV show that was very popular. I watched it. I was a huge fan of it. I really do think they botched the very last episode. The last season was really hard to watch, especially when all of a sudden Daenerys went cray cray. It wasn't good. So does anybody remember the very first sort of a few episodes? And the Stark family had these dire wolves. Well, let's see how they did this. So people automatically thought they were huskies. They weren't huskies. They were Northern Inuit dogs. But because they looked rather a lot like huskies, which just look similar to bulls, a lot of people, they were trying to breed these huskies because it was a really popular thing. Everybody wanted a dire wolf, and a lot of them ended up being put into care, put into a rescue centre because people couldn't cope with them, or the fad of Game of Thrones had died out, or the dire wolves. As we know, they didn't stay in the series for very long. So a Northern Inuit dog is a breed of dog that started by the crossbreeding of a German Shepherd and a Husky, which is now a new breed of itself. Sometimes crossbreeding does produce new breeds of dogs, like your cockapoos, for example. So let's have a look at the management of the female from conception to birth. Very, very, very briefly, because there's a lot here. So let's have a look at the stages of the estrus cycle. So we've got So this is the same for any mammal, any female mammal. You go through an estrus cycle, and you damn well know about it. So this stage is where the pre-estrus, this is the stage where the hormones start to change. During this stage, there is an increase in follicle growth, and regression of the corpus luteum. I'm not very good with these technical words. This means that the levels of progesterone decrease and estrogen levels increase. Progesterone decreases and estrogen levels increase. And at this point, the female's not sexually resistant at that time. She's not interested whatsoever. Estrus, so this is the stage where the female is in heat. And this is where she's fertile, and she'll continue to shoot. She will ovulate, and that is the time to be breeding her. Metaestrus is after ovulation. So depending on whether she's pregnant or not, the corpus luteum is going to start to develop again from the ruptured follicles, and this increases the levels of progesterone. Diaestrus, so this is where this is where the levels of the other hormone that I've already said and cannot say now, so they reach quite high levels and they become the dominant structure. I think we've got anoestrus, and this is the stage where the progesterone, whatever it's called, levels decrease and reproductive system can't rest before really starting the cycle again. I don't feel like I'm doing a very good job at talking through this at all and educating. So the time of mating is obviously when the dog comes into heat. So how do you know she's in the heat? Some dogs are tricky and they do have hidden seasons, but usually they pay a lot of attention to their back end, and they'll start licking it, and the vulva will become very swollen. So basically there's two tests that a vet can carry out to see whether or not it's the right time for your dogs to breed, if you're not sure that they're in heat. And this is a smear test, ironically enough, and this may be taken a few times, and that looks at any changes of the vaginal cells, which we all know as they do similar tests on humans to see if they've got cervical cancer. And then there's this serum progesterone test checks, and that's tests the level of progesterone in the female's blood, and they'll be able to see she's in heat from that. So let's quickly go through these stages of pregnancy, because this is going to be an awful long video. So from weeks 1, so days 0 to 7, this is the stage where obviously fertilization takes place. And your female should be monitored closely as they're vulnerable to infections from mating. Yes, animals do get STDs and STIs just like humans do. So you're looking for things that are abnormal, that don't look right. However, if there's a pink discharge coming from her vulva, don't worry, that's normal. So you can do normal feeding and exercise routine, that needs to be maintained. However, you don't flea or worm your female unless your vet tells you otherwise. So in week 2, days 7 to 14, during this stage that will develop into your puppies, and they'll grow and separate into little mini individuals. So the embryos will then go and rest in the uterus, where they're going to stay for the rest of the gestation period, which is only 9 weeks. So in week 3, days 14 to 21, the embryos will now implant themselves into the uterus, where they will receive the nutritions they will need to continue to develop. At this point, the embryos are under a centimetre length. Isn't that cute? And I have some weird, like, little alien looking embryo pictures here that I can show you as well. They look weird. Week 4, days 21 to 28. So this is the week where it's believed that the puppies are vulnerable from damage being caused, and the period where the development defects of the embryos may occur. So any breeding issues. Factors may include something like hereditary, lack of nutrients, and just lack of vitamins. So at this point, they're only 1.5 centimeters long. That is so cute. And the eyes and spine begin to develop, and it starts taking shape, and it's starting to look a little bit more like a puppy. So week 5, days 28 to 35. So the amniotic fluid increases in order to protect the puppies, and the puppies will now develop into whether the males or females, and they get little toes, whiskers and claws. And this is the point where your female's going to start putting on that weight and gaining some pounds, and that's also when you're going to have an ultrascan to see all those little puppies. So this is where you're going to introduce puppy food into the mother's food, and that sounds a bit weird, and this is going to give her extra calories, as puppy food is high in calories, and it's good for quick digestion. So week 6, 3 more weeks until they're born, and they are starting to look like puppies now. 35 to 42 weeks. 42 days, sorry. So this is when the female, she actually looks like she's pregnant. She looks like she's fed up, she's fat, she's bloated, she wants them out. Her mammary glands have probably darkened. The puppies are going to start to gain their markings that they may have on their fur, and their skin pigmentation will start to develop as well. So this is where it's a good idea to start making a whelping box, or a box where she's going to give birth, or a nesting box. And again, you're going to increase your female's food, because she's got quite a lot of little hungry mouths to be feeding inside her. So week 7, days 42 to 49, you may have observed that your female has started shedding hair on her belly. So this is in preparation for the birth, and is completely normal, so don't worry about it. The puppies will continue to grow. Stop giving the puppy food to the female at day, and this will encourage her body to store the calcium that the puppies are going to need. They really are looking like little puppies now, and it's really, really cute. So this is week 8. Days 49 to 57. Your female could give birth at any time now. She will start to produce colostrum, which is the first milk. That's very important. So avoid any rough play or stimulation that could cause early labour. Okay, so she's probably gonna start nesting at this point, and in week 9, she's gonna go into labour, hopefully. So, like I said, what you're gonna do how are you going to prepare for the labour? So obviously we said about having a box. You want it in a sort of like a quiet little area, and you want to make it as comfortable as possible for her, because at the end of the day it's going to be a stressful experience for her. You want to try and minimise the stress and make sure she's calm as possible. So you want to also have a checklist. That's very useful to have, especially if you've never bred dogs before. And that's just to have your veterinary's phone number on standby, just in case something does go wrong and she does need to be rushed into the vet. So you want that out of hours numbers as well, because most of the time females will go into labour out of office hours, during the night. So ensure you've got baskets, clean towels, nails, clippers or scissors on hand. The scissors are in case the mother cannot or does not chew through the umbilical cord, so you might have to cut the umbilical cord, and the towels will obviously throw the little puppies up in. Okay, so The first signs are a drop in her temperature when she's going to go into labour, but that's not something you're going to see. So labour begins 12 to 24 hours after a drop in her temperature. In the last weeks of pregnancy, also make sure that you take a temperature twice a day, or get a vet to do so. She may also become restless and move the bed area to where she prefers it to be, because you're never going to get it right for her. So she'll start nesting, and she'll keep looking at her rear end and looking at that as well. So there's actually 3 stages of labour, you'd be glad to know. So stage 1 is when your female's going to start to feel really small contractions. They may not be visible to you, but she damn well knows it's happening. And this is basically the cervix is preparing for the birth. So she might be really restless and unsettled. She might be panting, and she might be shivering, and she might even vomit. They're all normal signs, don't worry about it. Stage 2, this is where the puppies are being born. So this could take anywhere from 12 to 24 hours, I'm afraid. You will now see the contractions yourself. Mum's temperature will go back to normal just before the birth of her puppies. And there should be clear or milky coloured discharge coming from her vulva. And this is also normal. But if the discharge is green or yellow in colour, then you need to contact your vet. However, green coloured discharge is normal after the first puppy, but not before. So keep an eye out for that. The first puppy will appear 20 to 30 minutes, usually after the discharge, but there's no guarantees. If it's roughly just a bit longer, then mum's going to struggle, so you need to get into the vet. And puppies are usually born within 20 minutes of each other. However, it's not uncommon for mum to have a break in between puppies, because it's a very tiring process. If anybody's had children themselves, they'll know. And may not strain for up to 2 hours. However, if she's rested for more than 2 hours, then you need to contact your vet. And some litters are born tail first. If this is the case, then you should help to encourage mum to give birth. This is done by taking hold of the tail and gently pulling the puppy out to stimulate the mum to push. So once each puppy's actually being born, you should be placing them near mum's head so she can bite through the sac. Should she not bite through the sac, then you need to break the sac and rub the puppies with a towel to stimulate them breathing, and then place them back with mum as soon as possible. And during these really long bursts, mum might need to go to the toilet. But keep an eye out, because she might give birth while she's using the toilet. Stage 3 is where the placenta, there's one for each puppy usually. However, some do probably share a placenta if they're identical. So this should pass after each puppy is born. Try to keep count of the placentas. She may eat them, but if you don't know if she's eating it or not, then you need to call the vet, because it can be very toxic if it's left inside her. So the nutrition through to pregnancy, lactation and weaning, that's very, very important, and we'll quickly go through that, because I'm quite aware that there is a lot of information we're getting through, and there's a lot of videos. So this is you're going to start to increase your female's food. We've spoke about this in her 6 weeks of pregnancy. And you need to encourage a calorie intake. We've already said that. So some females will lose their appetite 2 to 3 days before giving birth. This is less common. However, you need to encourage her to eat at regular times, because she needs to keep her strength up. Right, and after the whelping, your female's appetite will increase. She will want to be fed small amounts frequently. You may wish to increase her food depending on the number of puppies she's providing for. And when the puppies are around 3 weeks old, you should start to wean them off mum. Not fully, just start to. And this can be done over a period of 2 to 3 weeks. And during this time, you should also start to reduce the food you're giving to mum. So once the puppies are fully weaned, your female should be back down to the amount of food she was getting before her 6 weeks of pregnancy. So I have a calorie calculator thing based on different dogs. These things exist online, so you can check those out. So hygiene, health and safety. So basically you just want to have a clean area and where the maintenance is going to happen, and that's going to increase in chances of infections being picked up. And it's the same when she's given birth. You want somewhere that's clean and it's comfortable and quiet. That's the whelping box. And it needs to have high walls so the puppies can't climb out and other animals can't get in, because mum's not going to like it. Some mums don't even like it when dad's near. So let's have a look at some problems that may occur. So infertility. We might have a dog that is just infertile and just can't get pregnant or get a female pregnant. And there's many reasons why infertility could happen. So there's like failure to cycle, so she's not going to heat, or she just doesn't copulate, or she cycles too frequently, or she's just an older dog, or it could be down to the breed, because some breeds have more fertility problems than others, like boxers, Dobermans, Pinschers, Dachshunds, Golden Retrievers, Great Danes, Irish Setters, miniature, I can't pronounce that. Anyway, they're like weird grey dogs with pointy D's. That's not very good example. Anyway, Schnauzers, I think it is, Poodles. Those types of dogs can have fertility problems, but not all the time, so don't be put off if you have a female like that. It might not be the female that's infertile, it could be the male, which you want to go on to. There could just be infections, or the dogs. Some dogs can end up having miscarriages as well, or abnormal ovary functions. So there's a lot that can cause that. So infertility in male dogs, again, it's stuff like the age. They could be too old or they could be too young. They could have misshaped sperm, which happens. I actually had to look at different samples under a microscope at uni. You looked at different sperm samples and you saw some abnormal sperm, and looked at vaginal tissues and how different they can be as well. If normal, if there's an issue there as well. Or normal, I should say. Sometimes they've just got hormone problems, or their testicles haven't developed properly, or they've got a low sperm count, or they've been injured. Again, there's disease. Maybe they're just shooting blanks, or they're unable to ejaculate. Maybe it's to do with any prescriptions, that they're on any drugs or anything. So there's a lot of problems that can happen with mating. So I'm not going to go into too much detail about these problems, but so we've talked about, obviously, dogs having infections, and depending on what you breed, I hope you're not breeding siblings or inbreeding dogs, because that will cause problems. But a lot of people obviously don't care because it's all about money. And I wish it really wasn't. Oh, and this is something that's also really important. You've got to make sure that the stud's a similar weight to the female, especially if they're not the same breed. Think about it. You're not going to be breeding a Great Dane with a Chihuahua. Use some common sense on that, because the male could end up hurting the female, or the puppies could be too big for the female to carry and has to have a C-section. So, yeah. Make sure that you use some common sense there. And just personal hygiene. And manscaping your dog, your male dog, is going to help with the prevention of infections as well. So then we've got things like the females, they could have eclampsia. If this happens, and they really need to be taken to the vet. There's postpartum problems. Again, that's to do with like eclampsia. Then there's like infections as well. So yeah, there's hemorrhage where they bleed out, cannibalism, or infanticide, as it's also known as, where they eat their own puppies. Or the puppies may be born with stuff like cleft palates, prolapsed uteruses. Again, you need to take them to the vets. Or they could have mastitis, so if that happens and they can't feed their puppies, it's too painful. So basically, in conclusion, you'd be glad to hear, breeding can be very complicated and can be quite a stressful process. Preparation and planning is essential. It will relieve a lot of stress for both you and your dogs. So taking your time, conducting research, always do your research, and taking advice from your vet may help you prevent any problems. So the correct conditions and timings are essential for both the stud and the dam, because a female dog is also known as a dam. Good hygiene is required to prevent infections, and the quality of aftercare for the mother and the puppies, it has to be a high standard to ensure that the mum has time to recover, and that the puppies are going to thrive. So that is all I've got to say on breeding dogs. I am going to do, if I ever get this business up and running, then there's going to be like a little package. If you want to come to us for advice on breeding dogs, then we'll give you all this information that we've just gone through in writing, and then you can read it in your own time. But other than that, if you've enjoyed this video, you feel like you've learned something, or you like any of the content I have been sharing over these past few weeks, click on my face and subscribe. Don't forget to click on notifications, and then you'll be notified every time we upload a video, which is every Wednesday and Saturday. Any animal related videos are down here in the playlist. Don't forget to share this with friends. Spread the message of how to breed your animal correctly, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.